recording now. Perfect. No problem. No problem. Okay, we're going to be recording, so I'm going to try to stay over here, and the computer's over here too, so I'm sort of stuck, but usually I wander around. Okay, I'm Elizabeth Wallner, and I'm with the Joint Special Populations Advisory Committee, and I know 2 people have heard of us before. Anyone else? 3. Yay. Okay. Perkins. So we're Perkins funded, and we come out of the federal legislation, and then California writes a state plan for it, you know, for all the Perkins funding, and that's what this is. New York does as well. Every state writes one, and we're funded through there. So we're authorized in the California state plan, which we worked hard to, so then they can't just like get rid of us really too quickly. One thing that I have heard, and I haven't got it in writing, but the Perkins State Plan 08 to 12 will actually be 08 to 13, probably 14, depending on. But they're not going to rewrite it next year. They're not going to get it done. So, but do pay attention, because it's when it's being rewritten is when we need to be paying attention and giving our input as often as we can. So California's answer to leadership for special populations was to convene the Joint Special Populations Advisory Committee. And what we do is we work to provide leadership and research and professional development opportunities, et cetera, throughout the state for equity and success in all areas, but particularly in physical education, and particularly for those that are defined as special populations within the Perkins legislation. Okay? If you have any questions or anything, just holler them out. Don't wait for me in case I just run right over you otherwise. Okay. And then we have a lot of resources, which I brought you some of the resources that we have. Everything is available online. You can take more. I have more in the back if you want to take some more back with you. And we'll talk about them. Actually, we'll talk about them now, otherwise I'll forget. Okay. So the first, we'll actually talk about this more as part of the workshop. We developed a 4-step process for students to choose their careers. So kind of before you see them or when you're seeing them in the initial stages of their education, how do they actually make a logical decision about what course to choose? So we'll talk more about that. Any of you who do any sort of advocacy for your program or for your school, this is sort of like the simple points. Career education, you know, who they are, what the special pops are, how you can help, so on and so forth. And on the back of almost all of our documents, if there is a back, this one doesn't really have a back so much, it is a back, we try to list a lot of resources. And I don't know about you, but my eyes are waning as I get older, and so they're harder and harder to see the font. So all of them are available on our website with live links. On this document, there are 2 studies that I want to bring your attention to: Pathways to Prosperity and Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. You've seen them. They're amazing. I think Standing on the Shoulders of Giants is truly one of the best articles I've read in a long time about current education. So, and then this one is sort of the same idea, except it's more for teachers and educators, all the facts that you need to know about, and then you can turn it into a poster and print it out. If students are going to be looking at stuff, give them the appropriate stuff to look at, you know, things that aren't girls in pink and boys in blue and so on and so forth. So, okay, we have a lot more resources that are available online about WASC, about all sorts of different things, so that, you can get them. Our website is jspac.org, and you can just go on there. Okay, so our committee is unique to the country. We're the only one that has joined between the 2 sides of the house, K-Adult and Community College. Everybody else has either 2 organizations or, you know, lots of different structures. And we're comprised of 10 from K-12, K-Adult, 10 from Community College, and then 10 from Business, Industry, and Labor. We're always looking for new members on the committee. It's like a 2-year cycle. We're looking for folks who represent the folks that are defined as special populations or work with them specifically, so on and so forth. So if you're interested, get in touch with us. We would love to have you. Okay. We're going to go through a lot of this really fast because it's only an hour, 50 minutes actually, and I want to talk about the meat of it more. Okay, so here are the monitors. If you need assistance, contact them. I told you we're funded by 2 grants. This is the second one, the CCC Special Populations, California Community College Special Populations. And they have a lot of research and a lot of effective practices on there. So if you want to start a program for single parents, don't recreate the wheel. Go there, do some research first, and then do it. And what they did was they went out and they interviewed programs from across the state over the last several years, and they've all got them up there. What it cost, how long it was, how effective it was, what the startup was, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, this is me and my contact information. If you need to get in touch with me, email is probably the best way to do it. Phone, I am in and out of the office a lot, so that's a little harder. These are the students that we're talking about, students with disabilities. Displaced homemakers. Does anybody know what a displaced homemaker is? Who can define it?
Someone who used to be not in the workplace or working on taking care of the other family and takes from school or whatever.
Yeah, for whatever reason, they're no longer dependent upon somebody else's income. And that's changed a lot in the last couple of years as the economy sort of made this huge belly flop. But also it includes families whose youngest child is aging out of the welfare system. So it could be, that changes the dynamics of the group a lot. So if you sort of shift the way we're thinking about it. Economically disadvantaged, including foster kids, limited English proficiency, or ELL or LEP or any of the acronyms that we use around the country. Single parents and those that are preparing for a career that is non-traditional by gender. Anybody know what that definition is? Individuals preparing for a career that is non-traditional by gender. The feds use NPO, California uses NT, Certified Professional Leadership. And who would that be? Yeah, exactly. Women going into the trades, into things like that, and men going into nursing or early childhood education. Exactly. So, and here are some examples here. And y'all are here for an IT conference. So who would be your students that were non-traditional? Women. Yeah, women, and all of your students from New York. They would all count. Yeah, they all fit into disability. She works with deaf. Okay. Hi. No problem at all. Please. I just want to make sure you have all the materials. You need to take something. Well, it might be easier. I don't know. Somebody, I think, missed their everybody has to make it messy. I think somebody dropped them. But anyway. Okay. So I would say, as they're going to go into rewriting the Perkins, this changes in every iteration. We're in Perkins 4 right now. In Perkins 3, there was another category called all those who were otherwise academically disadvantaged. And when I called to say, why did you take it out, they were like, I don't know. They really couldn't give me a reason. My point in saying that is you got to really, that's when they start rewriting the legislation, that's when you really need to pay attention because you never know what's going to happen. My guess, just from conversations that I've heard, people are pushing to get veterans in there, which I think a lot of them already qualify in one of the other areas, but I think they might be called out. So I think things will shift. They always do.
I'm just curious, isn't that part of the role of the advisory to give advice on?
We give it to California.
Right.
Oh, we give it to California. The National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, which is a wonderful organization, napequity.org. Yeah. They give advice, but you can always, as an individual, and JSAC can't advocate politically. We can try to push our will, but we're sort of in a dicey area. But students can advocate, you can advocate, teachers can advocate, parents certainly can advocate. So if you see something changing that's coming down in different iterations, it's really important that we get phone calls out. Now I said before we kind of started, the green sheet on top is the evaluation that we have for our own grant. The top portion, all I really need is your email address if you want to hear from us again. Because that'll get put into our database. We send out an email, a newsletter, 2, 3, 4 times a year, depending on how much it's needed. When we have great information, we'll send it out. And in there, as they're writing the Perkins plan, we'll put in, hey, they just redefined who special populations are, go ahead and check and see. We won't tell you how to advocate, but we'll tell you sort of when there's periods of time for open comments. Okay. We talked about all of this. Core indicators is kind of how the accountability measures for Perkins, so how well you're doing in your program. And it's really important, but we're not going to spend a lot of time because we don't have a lot of time. But every school in the state, every program within that school has to account for the success of their students in all the special population categories for every single class, every single program. What we want you to start doing is looking at this, and before you decide, oh, we need to recruit more women, or we need to recruit more whatever, look at your data first. Start with your data, and then go on from there. Make data-driven decisions. And I'll show you, we'll talk about that more, but I'll show you why. The Perkins program requires that you set a goal for your success. So 86% of your students are going to pass with a C or better in your career and tech-related program. So all of your programs in the IT department would have this. And if you don't hit that within 90%, then there are sanctions and they can go on. And this is the first time in 14 years now since I've been doing this that they have said, yeah, we'll take the money away. So this is the first time that they've ever said, yeah, there's not enough money, so we'll be happy to take it away, basically. Give it to other people who are actually going to do the work. So, and obviously the one that's the most difficult is the non-traditional. So that takes actual concerted effort to get women into the programs and to keep them. Okay. Perkins funds are only to improve your programs. They're not to sustain teachers. They're not to, pay for the flat lab. They're to pay for specific things to improve or expand the program, period. There's nothing else. How many of you know the way that your money is allocated on your campus? When you get your Perkins funds, your school gets the funds, and then how do you know how they're allocated out? Some of you? None of you? Okay. It's important that you do find out. It should be accountable. It should be very transparent. That process should be transparent. I don't know about other states, but California really doesn't like sort of the whole ADA. We have 10 programs, cut it into 10 pies and ship it out, because it doesn't really answer the how are we going to improve the program, or how are we going to improve the success of our students. So they want you to start looking at your successes, where your gaps are, and target your money specifically to a gap. Okay? Let's see, CTE state plan, this is what they're trying to shoot for, is demand-driven, access for all, success for all, self-sufficiency wages and programs, college and career, etc. So, this is all sort of really standard and laid out, and it is available online, so I just gave you the link, because I want to read it to you. Okay, and this is their statement in California State Plan Commission, industry-driven, individual, on and on. It's sort of the same stuff that everybody's been talking about for a long time. They just put it down. Global marketplace. These are the 11 elements of a high-quality CTE system decided by the state plan committee who wrote that state plan. So they really, got together from both sides of the house and figured that out. And the CTE, I think, well, I'd like to say it's a given, but I think that we're getting more emphasis from the legislature, from different folks, saying, oh, well, maybe we don't really need every kid to go to a four-year university. On this one, it talks about standing on the shoulders of giants, and they talk about the need for it. So 66% of jobs in this decade do not require a BA degree. So, and yet, we're talking about all of our kids going to a four-year university, and there's a lot of variance within that. So, talk about that as well. So these are the things that we think you should know when you go back to your campus. If you don't know it, you should find out. Who writes your Perkins plan? How do you get involved? How is the money allocated? Why? What gaps is it closing? So on and so forth. And is it tied to a labor market?
Please slow you down, buddy.
No, don't.
Going back to your point about you can't pay for instructors, can I pay an instructor at a non-whatever rate if it's targeted at a special population?
Yeah.
Then I can.
If it's specific to getting, but you have to show that specific population is not doing well. And that these are the steps that we're going to take to remediate that.
Okay. Is it not doing well passing, or is not doing well getting D?
But, well, yeah, it would be C or better would be one of the core indicators.
Okay.
I keep stealing the packet. Sorry, Jeff. Okay. On the back of here, because I have been working on this for 14 years, and I still sometimes go, what do core indicators mean? Oh my goodness. Here's a cheat sheet: adult community K-12, adult education, and community colleges. Okay, so this is sort of like my version of how fun I remember. So if you have students that are not doing something you are, sorry. She's holding up here. Okay, so if you have students that are not doing well in one of your core indicators, then by all means, get a teacher, get somebody and remedy that core indicator. But you're really going to have to show who, why, and if there's no other alternative. In order to have them there. If it's a startup program, then you have like 3 years. And then you have to have institutionalized that funding. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that equity should be part of all programs, not just CTE programs, but particularly CTE programs. And I talked about the intent of the law as well as the letter of the law. The letter of the law, the Fed nor State of California can tell you how to spend your money, but the intent of the law is to spend the Perkins funding to make sure that all students are successful, that all students are doing well, that all students have access. And access means more than just it's open registration to everyone, right? I mean, if that were the case, we wouldn't have. Who's a teacher in classroom teacher? And what do you teach?
I teach computer science, networking, security, and all.
Okay, and what's your gender balance?
Very few women.
So if access were just registration is open, we wouldn't have very few women because are women capable of doing computer?
They do well. Actually, they do better than men.
And yet we don't have enough women in the programs. So sometimes access is it's about recruitment, it's about comfort level, it's about, answering the needs that women have for if they're single parents or whatever the situation is. So access is a different
question. I mean, we were talking about this Perkins aspects at our college. So one of the things is that we've got to increase the non-represented population and women in my courses come to be that. So is there something that you help with that? Or
we do. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, absolutely. We can help you with that. There's lots of different programs that do. There's lots of different techniques that do. Yeah, we will, absolutely. Make sure, when you go back, try to get access to your core indicator report. How many of you look at your reports at all? Are they accurate? No. So that's your first step, is make sure that your data is accurate. Run your data. If this was a longer workshop, we usually do 3-hour workshops, and I would run all of your data and I would show it to you. And it's kind of frightening. We had a workshop at our conference. We just finished our conference in December, and the vice chancellor was sitting there from one of the colleges, and he was just absolutely stunned at how bad the data was. I mean, there just was whole reams of data missing. So sometimes it's just that it's not there. But that really counts on if you're doing really well in your program, it really is not a good thing. So really look at your data. Okay, accuracy, you have it first. Frequently I hear, particularly from community college folks, well, by the time we get our data back, it's 2 years old, so what's the point in using it, so on and so forth. The data came from you and went to the chancellor's office, not the other way around. They're not collecting the data. You're collecting the data, and you're sending it in, so you have first crack at it. If it's not correct there, and I'm going to show you some bad data, it's not actually from the community college, it's from the K-12, but it's kind of frightening. Okay. Okay, these are common data errors. Okay, so this is actual data, screenshots, final data. But this is from the K adult side of the house. Okay? So it has 0, 0, 0. This is common. Really common. Okay, so these are the core indicators on the back. So the 1S1 would be proficient or better in your CASE, the California High School Exit Exam, in English and Language Arts. This is math, this is CTE. So all of a sudden you have absolutely nobody getting a C or better. And this is their final data. That's what they sent in.
Quarterly basis?
Well, it should be by the schools, right? But you send it in once a year, right? Or quarterly.
It's too late now.
Right, exactly. Well, this is California Department of Education. They actually go through every data piece and look at it before they submit it. And they'll call the schools. I don't know that the chancellor's office does that, to be quite honest. Kind of doubting it. And there's 10 billion more schools there, but they still do it because the data looks like this. So who's putting in your data? Because clearly this isn't right. Now I'll tell you, when I started with this in this arena, I came from running restaurants, and I blew up my life, and I went back to school, so I got a job while I was going to school. And I was the monkey that was inputting the data, and I couldn't type, and I didn't understand the language, and I wouldn't have known if it was wrong to save my life, just because I didn't understand it. So make sure that it's, the right data is going in. And it's a lot of data to check sometimes, but those are some pretty egregious errors. So no students receiving a C or better, no KC, 73% of all students, and this is the actual, 70% of all students were getting, I'm represented. This is non-trad from here over. So 70% are non-traditional, but 0 are completing. So not a very good class.
Okay, so this thing goes to...
This went up to the chancellor. This went up to the California Department of Education.
So once they evaluate this,
They listen to
they determine, well, you know what, we're not going to get money this next year. Do they do that, or are they doing it?
They call them up and they say, and this is what the chancellor's office would do as well. They call you up and say, your data's wrong, fix it, or you're not getting your money. And they all fix it. The CTE is remarkably lenient, quite frankly. Okay, so here's the next one, doing too well, 100%, 100%, 100%. If I was looking at my data and I saw 100%, I'd be like, maybe not. I mean, just straight off the bat, I just don't buy it. But only 76% are graduating.
But it's 100%.
But they're all doing so brilliantly.
Is that census data or is this at the end of the class?
This is at the end of the class. This is actual data. But it turns out that 54% and 52% were these numbers, 54 and 52. Okay? Proficiency in the CASE is what they're reporting, and a lot of people report they passed. So that's where that sort of comes in. Low graduation rate. You had 88% with the C or better, but only 0.06%. Okay? So this is the kind of stuff. And you all, is anyone here from K-12? Okay, I didn't think so. I don't have it on me because it was, usually, like I said, I download it all for you. But your data is no better. It's frightening. It really is. It's amazing. Okay. So we're going to skip on so you can kind of see it. Okay. So we're going to look at some other data. And what I want you to look at is two things. One, I want you to look at the 75-25% gender rule. So if you have if you look at your data, and you have 92% males or 92% females, you kind of might want to look a little farther. Okay? And then ethnicity. Now, ethnicity is not part of the Perkins legislation, but I venture to say that it tells a completely different story when you pull apart your data by both ethnicity and gender. And you look from that perspective. So get it to most disaggregated position before you start really looking at it, okay? So this is looking for non-trad or other special population students not enrolled. They're not participating well. They're not completing, whatever. These are the things that you're going to be looking for. So all of your core indicators you can look at. Questions to ask about. One of the things that the committee decided was a lot of folks walk into meetings about data and they don't really know what to look for. And so we gave you like sort of cheat sheets. So this is what you want to be looking for. And that's what the questions about are. Okay, so this is actual data. Audit step 1 through 4. You start with 63 students, 42, 21, male and female breakdown, 56 and 33%. That's a great course, right? Perfect. Then you get down to 84, to audit step 4, and you're down to 8% female. So if you were looking at this data, what would you think? What issues would come up? Retention. And where are those problems? Go ahead.
You're not including those special populations.
Yeah, you're not keeping them. This is the break that was concerning me. From audit step 3 to audit step 4. 1 and 2 doesn't really say anything. People come in and take a class and they decide they don't like it. They want to learn how to change their oil. They want to get a job at Jiffy Lube, whatever the situation is. When you start getting down into your third semester and then you drop, that's the problem that I would be looking
You're for. already probably a major and then you change.
Yeah, either you changed or what else could be the issues?
You're not interested.
You drop that out.
What else? Could it be a hostile classroom? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Could it be that they need money and so they've now gotten through 3 semesters and they could get a job? Do they do better if they get that certificate? Absolutely. Absolutely.
But if they don't get a job, then they may be going at the same rate, so that probably wouldn't be a big gender.
It could, right. It might not be. Yeah, that would be concerned. But maybe they could get a job at the service industry or, something as a cashier somewhere. But they're not going to make a lot of money. So we need to start talking. And what can you do if your students are dropping out? What would you do for your female students? And you can pretend it is an auto, pretend it is computers. in your department. So what would you do?
Well, one thing I would do is before they start reaching the dropout point. I think it's important, one, to really have a connection between several different disciplines. The instructor, the student, a counselor, so that, and maybe, a partner, whatever form of partners there are involved, because if as an instructor, the students aren't showing up to class, they're coming in late, I can refer that student or defer that to the counselor and have he or she reach out to the student and try to pull them in and get them back on track then. So
way before they're down there.
Before they get to the
when they're in IT 1.
Yeah, when they're IT 1, yeah, because the intermix, several things happen.
Right, exactly, and it could be lots of different things, right?
One of the things I want to know is, are they doing this as a cohort? In other words, are students starting out working together in teams? Because, it works for medical school.
Works well for medical school.
Works well for Yale and Harvard and others. Why not put the time investment in creating a community of these students so they help?
Because we know that they get through.
That shows that cohorts are there's lots of stress in cohorts.
And if we're looking at women dropping out of IT, how do we address that? What do we do? We've got a relationship, developed a relationship already, then what?
Find role models.
Role model. How about you? Because you're kind of a role model, aren't you? We just talk to the women up front and say, look, we know this is hard, we know this sucks, we know it's a challenge, we know, we get it. And actually have those conversations.
And maybe not necessarily wait to have, the job dangling in the end. That's great. But maybe doing some type of internship, that type of, having some real hands-on.
Yeah, hands-on internships. Because if they need the money, are they going to stay in school or support their children?
Exactly.
They're out the door. So, okay, what else can you do?
Well, we can get them an orientation before they even start, and we also need to have.
Okay. So, forewarned, forearmed.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Here.
What if the first course was a GE requirement? And for a requirement within their major.
Right.
So they're going to drop out. They're not going to take other classes. They didn't drop out of the program. It was never.
So maybe we don't talk to these ones, we talk to these ones. Because we know half of these are just going to be here just because it's part of lots of other different course requirements.
Does the Perkins people take that into account? Or
I don't know. Every school is completely different. Every school. I'll give you an example. There's a process that the National Alliance for Partnership and Equity and STEM Equity developed. It's a 5-step process. Now it's a 3-step process, but of course they've kind of condensed it. But they look at their data and they see where the drop-off points are. They figure out why. They go and they look and they talk and they have conversations and they do research and so on and so forth. And then they come up with strategies to correct that. And then they implement it. Okay? So we had a school in Bakersfield that we were working with. It was actually an adult education school. But they had this huge drop-off rate. It was not in, I think it was in business something. I don't remember which one. Can't remember which one. But it was a huge drop-off rate halfway through. So like right here, half the students dropping out. So they went and they figured out it's because they were going out and getting jobs. They needed the jobs. They needed to work. So they broke the program into 2, and they put these 2 at night. And that's all they did, was they put these 2 at night, and their completion rates just skyrocketed. Okay? So, but they had to know up front what the problem was. You just go, oh, well, it's because they need daycare. You can have an empty daycare center sitting there, and you're out $50,000. But if it, because they kind of thought, well, it's about daycare, but it's not necessarily. I mean, it could have been, because maybe they didn't need the money as much if you provided daycare. So that's kind of stuff. Another school, they, by mistake, they had an automotive, it actually was an automotive program, and they needed a lab assistant. And so they went out and they needed a Spanish-speaking lab assistant. So they went out and they found the best candidate for that lab assistant position, and it happened to be a woman. And she came in, and lo and behold, over the next two semesters, and they've been tracking the last 3 or 4 semesters, the numbers of women going into that program have just risen steadily throughout. Why?
They had a role model.
They had a role model, exactly. So look at it and see, is it women? Do we not have any women lab assistants? Is it daycare? Is it transportation? Is it, we've had schools change the timing of their classes because the bus stopped running, halfway through, so everybody left halfway through the last course of the day, and so they'd all leave. So they had to shift everything down a little bit, and their numbers got skyrocketed. Okay, so you really need to be looking at your data and then figuring out what's causing that gap. Okay, does that make sense? Here's another one. This is why I asked you to separate ethnicity. Here's all the different CTE programs. If you have 790 students, 158 of them are Hispanic, you want to be within plus or minus 10% of your population. So their population is 28% at this school, and their participation in CTE is 20%, which is great. They're not being funneled, so on and so forth. However, when you break apart the departments, who makes more, auto tech or IT, nurse's aid or IT? Yeah, IT makes far more still by a long shot. And then I would break this down by female, male as well, because I'm going to be willing to bet that these kids are all females, these are all men. Okay, so I would break it down even further. Get it down to your lowest common denominator. Now, why would all Hispanic students, I'm just using this as an example, go into one course, or all African Americans, or all whatever?
They let their groups.
Teacher.
It could be a teacher. It could be all of those things. Could it also be that that's what's available in the marketing world? Movies, TV, all that kind of stuff. What they're showing is, Hispanic females. Right. The role models for Hispanic females in the media include what?
Celebrities.
Some. A couple of them. Not very many Hispanic.
What's the first one?
How many? What jobs are available to Hispanic females in movies, TV, all that kind of stuff? Maids. Service. Exactly. You're betting money that they're all going to be down in here. Okay? So, here we go. So pay attention. That's what we need to be thinking of. So this is why I really want you all to break this down. This is just justification, proof that this is the wages. We really want to funnel students into all of them, because ethnicity nor gender determine what you're interested in. Okay? But we're not going to actually do the data exercise because there's no time. But this is what I kind of wanted to get to, the root causes. So you've gone through and you've looked at your data, and what we would do is we pull down your data and you actually look at it and you figure out where's the biggest gap. So tell me a gap. Your gap is IT, you have no women. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, so this is Perkins. This is a document from the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity. It's called Root Causes and Strategies. It's available online, just Google it. And these, in the parentheses, are which core indicator it would relate to the closest. Okay, so active student participation in STEM activities. So you're at the college level. How would you then provide your students, the ones that are going to be coming into your program, with access to and participation in STEM activities? STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, and math. So how could you, as college folks, impact that?
You have to talk to industry leaders. Find out what's needed, what kind of jobs are out there, what skills they need.
Okay, but how are we going to have students with access to STEM activities? Hands-on kind of things. Go to the colleges. Summer camps. Internships. Externships.
Well, I was thinking my daughter's in 6th grade, and she went to something called Empowering Horizons. Expanding Horizons. And that has just turned her on to science so much, just that one-day conference.
Yeah.
At that state. It was just amazing.
Yeah. It's remarkable how much kids it doesn't occur to them to become X, Y, or Z because they've never seen a female long firefighter or, whatever it is. I actually teach about engineering in middle schools in Sacramento because when you say, do you want to be an engineer, they're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what an engineer is. And so this is just completely outside of their area. So unless it's been shown to them, it's occurred to them, they're not going to come through your doors, folks. It's not going to happen. If all we see on TV and in the movies is that the IT folks are, sort of the guy from Facebook, people like that, and, what'd you say?
White male and geeky.
White male and geeky. Nobody else is walking through your door. White male Kiki with Asperger's. Okay, she just fried all of you with non-love. Yeah, I like her already. Okay. So it really does, if that's the image that's out there, and it is certainly the image that's out there. I mean, obviously, y'all kind of defy that image, I gotta say. But that isn't. So what are you going to have to do? Market. The anti-marketing campaign. If the marketing campaign is white male with Asperger's, then you're going to have to show other people doing successfully who are not white male and geeky. You know, not just, and it might be the wrong image. That's a total stereotype.
Yeah, and one of the problems with that, and it's being forwarded as a alternative to education, is education in media. And you're saying that maybe not a bachelor's degree, maybe some form of it. Whether it's a certificate or an AS degree. But they're saying none at all.
Okay, well, we don't believe.
Yeah,
we're going to come to those schools.
But image, so, I mean, they're even talking about this painting out of their school, and we said, why are you even bothering? I mean, that's how pervasive that attitude is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people have found that, but it's really,
I think it depends neighborhood by neighborhood.
I mean, this is what, 0.001% of the population is like this.
Yeah, I know.
They're being treated
Yeah. An example. Yeah, so we have to have the anti-marketing campaign. We have to come up with reasons why they should be going to university or just to your college. That we have to be coming up with, hands-on activities for them. All that kind of stuff. We build little houses with them, that phone board stuff. And they've never even put together a model airplane or anything. I'm like, wait a minute. But they all have iPods. I'm like, okay. Or cell phones now. Okay, so academic proficiency. Academic proficiency, if a student's doing poorly in your earlier programs, they're not going to continue on. I'm telling you now. So intervene at that stage, the earlier classes. Perkins cannot pay for that unless it's for a special population. But there's a whole bunch of basic skills stuff online that's free, so you can go and pull that down. It's fabulous. Create incentives for AP courses, all that kind of stuff, so that you really get students who are academically well prepared.
Can you just briefly talk about the relationship between STEM funding and Perkins funding? I mean, how do they, we have, it just seems like...
Well, Perkins would fit into the non-traditional. So it would be that non-traditional factor at the core measure 6A and B, which is non-traditional, and then there's non-traditional in all of the other ones as well, so coordinator 1. So I would say that those two collaborate, and that's a great idea, collaborating financially between different departments because they have money, VEA has money, so-and-so has money, DSPS, and these are all the same students, so...
But it seems that those of us in technical education, like computer applications and computer science, don't get to take advantage of the STEM resources. Like, I don't know if the person over there has experienced that, but it seems like they're more for science, engineering, and math as opposed to the technology piece.
I don't know, we finally got one.
I think that you just need to start collaborating. I think there's a huge silo application in education that we all do this, and that's why at our conference we have folks come in teams so they can try to...
But you brought up a good point though, like computer applications. You can't, even your Perkins person was saying you can't use money for that, but like you were saying, especially the women, I want to get them into, get more excited about databases and stuff. If I can't get them more help at a computer applications class at the very beginning, I'm going to lose them.
Right. So you're going to need to well, Perkins can definitely pay for an aid. Definitely pays for an aid.
Okay, but how do I show that helps them gradually?
Well, you're going to have to look at the research and see what's going to go on. And you can also have to talk to your students at the beginning and say what would help. The ones that are dropping out, say what would keep you here? What would make this easier for you? Is it that you need more study time? Is it that you need a tutor? Is it that you need something in Spanish, the curriculum in Spanish? You have to first figure out what the problem is and then, specifically target that aid to that. If it's daycare, if it's, like we're talking about the bus schedule. But really target it, and you have to show that's where the problem lies. There's not enough money, let's face it. We're all scrambling for the same dollar, so we have to sort of prove that it's there. So early intervention, we've talked about that. Support services, you all have a lot of instructional strategies, so I'm not going to go over these. I do want to because you know them, I'm guessing. There's lots of resources. Self-efficacy and attribution theory and stereotype threat, I think, are three things that really impact students coming into or staying into programs. Self-efficacy is the idea of what? Anybody know it?
Believing that you can do stuff.
Right, believing that you can actually do it. How many students come in the door thinking that they can actually be successful in this program? We know through social science research, and that's always up for debate, but that women tend to self-select out. So they'll sort of back off of things. Whereas, men sort of feel in this culture that they can do whatever they want to do. So what do we have to do with female students? There you go. Role models. Yeah, there you go. We got to provide them role models. That folks. Now, if you can't have folks come into the classroom, what can you do?
You can virtualize them.
Virtually? Photographs, pictures, podcasts. There's all sorts of stuff online. There's, at the end, there's just pages of resources. There's, scientists with disabilities. There's all sorts of different things. So, getting that is going on. Attribution theory is the idea that we attribute our successes and failures externally or internally. Women tend to attribute their failures internally and their successes externally, and men do the opposite. Women are all going to yell. I frequently go into college campuses and to different places, and I was in a college campus recently, and it took me probably 40 minutes to find the building. And I'm pretty darn smart, and pretty confident, and you can read and write English, and you can speak English on occasion. And it took me a really long time. I thought, okay, I'm a single mom. Somebody's just convinced me to go back to school in the first place, and I can't find the classroom. What am I going to say to myself? I'm out of here. See, I told you I don't belong in school. So really simple things. Go back to your classrooms. Start with your classroom. Start with your syllabus. Start with your curriculum. And look, is this, to use a horrible term, idiot-proof? Can Elizabeth do this? If I can't do it, forget it. You want your basic curriculum to look like something that people can challenge. Can handle. So it's not such a challenge that they're going to go, yeah, no. Rutgers, I think it was Rutgers, they did the same process, the 5-step process that I was talking about. And they had this huge problem in their IT, it was actually their computers program. After the first semester, a huge number of students would drop out. Predominantly women, but both. So they sat down and they looked at it and they took it all apart and they looked at it and they realized that there was one class that was required to take in the first year, but it wasn't required the first semester, but it was the first semester, and it was really, really hard. And that class was just, it was turning out to be the gateway that nobody really wanted or intended. So they moved out to the second semester, and they had one semester of success underneath their belt before they took on this class. And they were able to say, look, we know you made it to the first semester, we know you're capable of doing this, and so we know this is hard, keep going. And they were able to raise their success rate dramatically. So you got to really look at, what it is that where the problem really is coming from. Are you getting women into your program and they leave, or do you keep the ones that you get?
About 50-50.
Okay, so then it's a recruitment and a retention issue, right? Getting more students in is one, so you're going to have to do a two-pronged thing. One, you're going to have photographs and role modeling and folks at counseling, and the other one is, lab assistants or just saying, I know you can do this.
The bottom line is, whether it's programming class or computer applications class, they just, to them, it's something they have to take. It's not a part of their major. So they just,
okay.
So what do you think?
They don't see it, do they see it as something that they can really use
No.
and apply in
No, how
real
am I
life?
going to explain it? It's just...
Okay, they will be counted. Until they get into the capstone courses, they're not counted in Perkins data. Because otherwise you all would fail miserably. Everything would be a wash because so many of our students come in, they take a class, they're just there for, one semester to upgrade their skills, something like that. And so you would be penalized for that. And that's how it started, and it was too much. So it's now until you start getting into the capstone courses that they're not even counted. But don't assume that that's why they're only there. Maybe they're just get freaked out. Yeah. Okay. So role models and mentoring, we talked about that. Family characteristics. Can you impact family characteristics? Can you impact the family?
Yeah.
Sure. How? People with disabilities?
You could also do, like, if you could do training sessions or like intro sessions for parents.
Absolutely.
Engage.
Absolutely. Get them engaged and understanding. Because what do parents want for their kids? Happiness, success, financial stability, all that kind of stuff. And if they know that they can get this here, then they're going to be a lot more willing to take it on. Okay, I want to talk about stereotype threat. Stereotype threat is, there's an author called Claude Steele, and he's down, I think he's at Stanford now. Have you read his stuff? He's amazing, absolutely amazing. He's got a book called Whistling Vivaldi. He was a grad student in Claude Steele. He was a grad student, and he would be walking home at night in the evening, and he sort of dressed as a student, and he's black. And he'd walk along the street, and people would get, sort of nervous and would clench their purses and walk to the street, whatever. And so it made him nervous, and he found that when he gets nervous, he whistles, and he started whistling Vivaldi, hence the title of the book. And people all of a sudden stopped freaking out around him. And he realizes, because he had broken the stereotype of, he'd been whistling some sort of rap song, I don't know any of the artists, or I'd have used the name of one, but I don't know them. Then he maybe could have, then it would have confirmed that stereotype, and he would have been more impacted in a negative way. So he started doing research, I think in Michigan, and because they had a lot of black students coming into the program, they had obviously been accepted, they had obviously qualified, they were getting got in, and then they were not completing, they were not succeeding. And he came up with the idea of stereotype threat. And basically says that if a student is aware of a stereotype, and they go in to take a test or something, and their first question they're asked is, what's your gender, what's your ethnicity, what's your age? Or, I'm going to confirm the stereotype. So she and I go in and take a test, and she's been told in the media or through whatever that African Americans don't do well on tests, or they're just not as smart as white people, or whatever the situation is. And this is what he found, is that their test scores would drop by up to 29%.
You mean that they added the ethnicity versus that they did?
Yeah. So facing that stereotype, they're going to say, and it doesn't matter if you're African American or Mexican or female versus male or male Caucasian versus an Asian male, because Asians are all what? They're all brilliant. They're all incredible mathematicians.
Well, I did that first day of class, but I want to get the data.
The first day of class is fine. Talk about it, get the data, and then you don't need to get it on every test. That's ridiculous.
Well, on every test, I'm sorry.
Right. So you go in and you get the data, you collect it, and you're done, right? I mean, you're going to get that all through registration. You don't need a registration. Yeah, so you don't even need to collect it. But so the first thing we do on these standardized tests is fill in our name, age, and data, and ethnicity, right? Kind of a bad idea. So reframe it. There's a really amazing website. It's not another website. It's called Reducing Stereotype Threat. And it just has 11 steps, and it's reframing, talking about, pointing out that this test that she and I are both taking, she's really good at math, I think, because I'm making assumptions here, and I'm not, because I'm just a girl. It sort of takes all that out of the way, and we're talking about this kind of stuff, because, again, it's forewarned, it's forearmed. Yes?
In basic skills, they found that when students, once they took the placement test, student scores well, if they took that same test 2 weeks later after having gone through it, their scores improved.
Dramatically.
Well, it varied, but they all improved.
Yes. Yeah.
Because all of that has just been out of the learning. Now this is.
No, I can do this. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you can make these kinds. So give the test twice. Mm-hmm. If you see this dramatic fall off, then go. Sorry. So we're all sitting going to say to them, those first test scores don't count. You're just going to do it again. As a pop quiz, they already know the material. I always said if I had taken my final 6 weeks after the classes were over, I would have gotten straight A's on everything. But that didn't happen. Okay, so media, positive and negative. We're filled with negative input all the time. So you have to really do a positive media. But there is some good media out there. So start using it. One of the teachers came up with what they call Monday morning discussion, something like that, I don't remember. Oh, the Monday morning ad discussion. So she'd have our students pick out one of the ads or one movie or one TV show or one something, and they would deconstruct it. What are the stereotypes? What are the gender stereotypes? What are the ethnic stereotypes? And what is this telling us? And are you being impacted? And so on and so forth. Because once you start looking at media critically, it completely changes. I started doing this with my kid, and now he's a total pain to watch TV with. He's like, look at that stereotype. Kitty, you must be a treasure. Okay, so again, if we had 3 or worse step, we would do a root causes exercise where we put these into sort of a hierarchy of you've looked at your gap. I mean, you've looked at your data and determined the gap. You don't have enough females come into your courses. And then you said, okay, these are the primary reasons why they're not. And you sort of, and school by school, it comes off as something completely different. So these are the basic root causes that most people find. And so I give you little slips of paper and you put them in, you shift them around and you get those arguments and it's really funny to watch. And you come up with something. There's lots of others. You know, there are some, or not lots, but some others. And this is kind of what we have them do. I hope you sort of take them onto a big sheet of paper. And so you can sort of see that every school comes up with sort of a different plan. But this is the process of determining where I'm going to really put my Perkins money. Where am I really going to target those funds? All right, so questions about retention, questions about your CTE. You can read all this. Positive CTE information needs to be everywhere, on the walls, at the registration, everywhere. And if you're talking about just your programs, then positive information about IT careers that don't depict men at all, because men know that they're welcome here, right? So don't even talk about it. They're not going to go away. Okay, I want to go over this really fast because, yeah, we're out of time, but I know, it's crazy. This card, there are 4 steps. The first step is financial needs. If you go out and you live in Sacramento, it says that you need $38,000 a month, $3,800 a month to live in Sacramento. In Ventura, $47,000. San Francisco is even higher. Okay, so it really makes a big difference. Then you have to know what is it that students have to know what they like and don't like. And then they need to figure out what careers are open to them, what job market's looking like. So they have to go in and look at LMI wage data, lots of self-awareness, the LMI data, okay? And then they choose a career. How many of you know students who have chosen a career because it's got Tuesday, Thursday class offerings, or Monday, Wednesday class offerings, or their boyfriend or girlfriend, or blah, 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 blah. And then they end up hating it, or there's no job at the end of it, or whatever. So really being conscious of what you're doing before they make a plan. And you're, you know, particularly you who have students coming in, you can give them these and say, look, this may not be the class that you want, but figure out what it really is. Because a lot of students, I venture, are going into it because somebody told them to. Right. That's how I became a teacher. They said, well, you're a single mom, you should be a teacher. I have no filter, and I don't want parents, so that didn't work well. Okay. So here's the resources, chock full of resources everywhere. All right. Thank you very much. Sorry I went over.